It's a real honor and pleasure for me to be here with three wonderful artists. I had the pleasure of seeing this show on Saturday night, and so like those who've already seen it, tremendously enjoyed their performances. I'd like to just introduce them to all of us together, and I'll start from my far right with Andrew Varela, who is Javert. Everybody can boo now.
I have feelings.
Andrew was last seen on Broadway in Sondheim's Sunday in the Park with George as Jules. Other Broadway and national tour credits are Little Women, Professor Bear, Les Mis, Jean Valjean, so watch it.
I keep trying to get him to take over. You can keep it.
The Phantom of the Opera, The Phantom, and Cats, Evita, and many other roles. In the center is Betsy Morgan, who plays Fantine. Brava. Betsy was in the original casts of the revival of A Little Night Music on Broadway, Little Mermaid, High Fidelity, and she's participated in a number of other readings and workshop productions in New York and at Lincoln Center there. She was on one of my favorite television shows, Flight of the Conchords. And
see, now I'm cool.
That's right. That's right. And locally, people may have seen her as Leslie Benedict in the premiere of Giant at Signature Theater just a few years ago. Welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, to my close right, is J. Mark McVey, who plays Jean Valjean. Mark won a Helen Hayes Award here in D.C. Originally for his role as Jean Valjean in Les Mis. And he, by the way, I think this is really remarkable, and I'm going to be asking him about this. This run begins more performances. He had already clocked in 2,900 plus performances. So, and those of you who've seen it, it's as fresh as if he'd never played it. I mean, it's really wonderful. Other roles that other shows that he's been in on Broadway: Tommy, Stairway to Paradise, Showboat, Chess, Carousel, My Fair Lady. And in addition, Mark has the pleasure of appearing on stage with his daughter. So we'll be talking about that in a few moments as well. Anyway, welcome to all of you, and thank you for giving us your time today. I'm going to ask them some questions and get us talking up here, and then in the last 15 minutes or so, we'll have an opportunity for you all to ask some questions, and there's a mic out there that you'll be able to use for that. So that's how we're going to conduct this afternoon. And I actually wanted to start with Mark. I have lived in D.C. and worked here in the theater community since the 1970s, actually. And so I was here when Les Mis came to the Kennedy Center pre-Broadway. And in that production, there was a turntable. And some of you who've been here a while may remember that the opening of the production, the pre-Broadway production of Les Mis, was delayed by several days because the turntable wasn't working properly. And in addition to that, there was a hum to the motor that was in the wrong key for the music. So I'm not making this up. So they had to compose some other music to cover the hum of when it was exposed, when there wasn't something else going on. This production is staged very, very differently. Those of you who haven't seen it yet, it's really a feast for the eyes as well as the heart, the mind, and the ears. And there's no turntable. And there are a lot of other things that make the physical space different. And I was just wondering, Mark, how that, or if that, changed or affected your performance.
I think that it does affect the performance just a little bit. This is a much more physical production. And I didn't really think it could get much more physical from this character's perspective. This is the guy that carries around everyone. He used to actually go down into onto the floor to get the Fantine. Remember that?
Yeah.
When we used to get her off of the turntable to get her back into the bed and carry her back to the bed. That's one of the things that's changed. It's different, and we don't have to carry you. Of course, it wouldn't have been a problem, but some of the other girls had a little heft to them. 150 pounds from a day. It's not good.
I've known Mark for a good long while, and he was coming into this production, and he was off stage watching Valjean carrying Marius through the sewers, and he's sitting there, he's looking at him, and I'm waiting to go on to find Valjean, and we're sitting there, and Mark is just like, that guy weighs like 170 pounds, doesn't he? I was like, yeah, you got to carry him. He's like, man, I used to be so small. And then now, it's not easy.
So that's the difference is the turntable used to help us along with that, and the carry through the sewers in particular, you actually got to take about 3 or 4 steps perhaps before you were into the next pool of light and you were changing your position with the Marius. And this Marius weighs 170, 175 pounds. And now I have to carry him dead center stage 22 feet to the back.
Wow.
And then without any help from a turntable or anything like that, and then put him down, and then drag him another 15 feet. And then
sing.
And sing.
And keep singing.
And carry him in a frontal carry at 170 pounds for approximately, 30 seconds, would you say? Maybe not quite that much, 20, 25, 30 seconds.
I don't care. I wouldn't want to
So the physicality of it has changed, and it makes it, I was saying this to my daughter this morning. We were walking across to breakfast, and I said, you know what, it's taken Dad about 4 months to get physically used to this production, where it used to not take all that much time. But I always, each week I go visit the chiropractor and I go visit the massage therapist and such. And every week I would be dying until I got to the chiropractor and to the massage therapist. And now I'm at a place that, okay, I don't have to see him this week. I'm okay. I'm feeling better. So my body is finally getting used to it, but it has taken 4 months, people.
There is no harder job in theater than Valjean. I'll say that. There's no harder job to do it. I mean, I can't imagine anything like maybe Evita or something like that. I mean, just the amount of work, the difficulty of the music, the struggle of getting through it, the length of the show, for heaven's sakes. It's not for the faint of heart.
And it's not just these muscles. When you carry people that you have to keep in shape, it's your vocal muscles, and that takes maintenance, and it takes a lot of conditioning.
And the diaphragm, making sure that the diaphragm is loose enough to pull.
It's really
air
like
into the
dancing.
lungs.
It's like there's a really athletic component to Valjean.
Absolutely. No, thank you for reminding us of that. That art is not just ephemeral and in your mind, but it's visceral and in the body. Betsy, I was going to ask you, you've played many roles in many different shows. There's something about Les Mis, and I was around for the first phenomenon of it, and now to see this 25th anniversary production capturing audiences all over again. I was just curious, from your vantage point inside the show, what do you think is special about Fantine, but also about the show?
Well, I also grew up with the show, and I didn't grow up seeing it. I think I only saw it maybe once when I was a child at the auditorium in Chicago. Hey, maybe you guys were in it.
I'm sure I was.
When I was
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
So I also grew up with it both on CD or cassette tape, if I can date myself, and so I had not an idea of somebody doing the show, but I just had this idea of what the show was to me, and through my experience with it. So when you come and you see my version of Fantine, if you have seen the show before, I have heard and would like to believe that it's a bit different from what people are used to. And so it's been great for me to join not only a company, but a show that's been around for so long, and redefine a character that we've gotten to know both in theatrical culture, but also now in pop culture.
Yes.
It's become an important song and an important story. And then also being a part of not just Les Mis, but a part of a touring company is a really unique experience. And you spend really just about every day with the same group of people moving from city to city to city. And you can tell by the way we interact with each other, you become family. And that's been a unique and wonderful and sometimes really hard experience.
Right. How long is the tour going to be?
This tour is going to go on for years.
Right.
It's so successful. It's getting such great reviews. They just keep slapping cities onto the end of it.
Wow, that's fabulous.
I'm calling 7 years. That's the over-under on it, I
Right.
think.
That doesn't mean we'll be there for 7 years. He
No.
might.
Right.
I can't get work.
Right. So you're the villain, and you've
Nice opener.
and yes, and you've played villains before, Judd and other such roles. What does it feel like in this play, where I think there's so much emotion invested in Jean Valjean and Fantine and the people who are victimized by society and the system, the political system. And you, in many ways, represent that system. I mean, you become a target person in many ways for that. So I'm just curious how, since I think a lot of young people, when you play roles, maybe you want to be loved. And I just want to be loved. So
We all do, Leslie. We
that's
all
right.
do.
Thank you.
Later today, hopefully.
That's right. Oh, okay.
I think that first and foremost, all of those things that you said are absolutely correct. But my job as an actor, first and foremost, is to create a human being. And so when they gave me the role, because originally I went in for the role that Mark is playing because I'd done it before. But when they saw something in me that they wanted to try for they said, Andrew, we really, you're wonderful job, but we want to hear you sing Stars. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't get the gig. That was it. And then they just kept asking me to come back and working with me, and I booked it. And honestly, I'm as shocked as you. But then I realized I had a great opportunity to create my own guy. Javert is usually played very, very static. You know, he's all about the suit and the hat and all that stuff. And I was like, you know what? He's not a soldier. He's a cop. And we all see the cops on TV that are just because they're so immersed in the dark parts of society that it gets on them, and they've seen too much. And I wanted to make sure that my guy had that kind of quality to it. So that allowed me to always show him as somebody that's really like a white knuckle alcoholic. He's just hanging on. He's hanging on, and the law is the only thing that he can hang on to. And that is why everything falls apart when Valjean teaches him about kindness. But my job was to make him, and my delight has been making him a human being that you call him a villain. A lot of people, when they see the show, they're just like, he's really screwed up. He's lost his humanity in pursuit of the law, and that's his journey. And and he finishes it in the show. Spoiler alert.
I have to be forthright and say that I think that you do a fabulous job not being the villain, because I think that it's the key thing here is that this is really, to me, it's a story of two different sides of the story of grace, and one comes from the Old Testament and one comes from the New Testament.
Right.
Yours comes from the Old Testament, mine comes from the New Testament. So I just applaud you. I think that you do a fabulous job
Thank you.
at not being the villain here, and that's very key to the way that I tell a story.
Yeah,
Right.
and going along with that, then you can have a little. The fun is that growing up, I always liked Darth Vader more than Luke Skywalker. So I do have those moments of just like walking aboard the spaceship and and looking threatening at people, and that's great. I love that. But then I still have to make a person so that we can have a relationship in there. Like we had, they told me that I hated Betsy. One of the directors said, "You hate her. You hate Fantine. That's why you're so angry at her." And I'm like, "Why do I hate her? I don't hate Fantine. She's just my job. I just have to get her out of the street. She broke the law." And then and the great thing about working with these two guys is that when you work with experienced actors, everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows how to keep the ball in the air, and we'll have 1,000 minor sort of unspoken interactions on stage. Just as this doesn't work. I need to move here. You're stepping on my dress. Things like that we all understand because we've been doing it so long. It's just been a great experience as for the piece of theater that we're doing and as an actor for a job to do. It's been really great.
There's one lyric in the past, for whatever reason, the past month, that I every time I come to it, I'm not sure if it's high or tall. I just can't remember which one to say. And every day I have that moment where I look at him and I have said the wrong one before, and I have that moment where I look at him and say, if I rhyme the incorrect lyric with another incorrect lyric, is that going to mess you up? And he looks at me and says, yes.
Yes, I won't. No,
It will be a disaster.
No, it will. I will not manage myself. I will not be able to manage myself.
Well, I think one thing that you bring out, too, is not every play gives us the opportunity to see dimensions of all the different characters. Sometimes the villain is just the bad guy. I mean, you bring humanity to it, but it's not there in the text.
That's a part two. That's
yeah,
fun too.
and it's so wonderful that you do have that wonderful song and that moment at the end where you're just going into oblivion. And I think, so that what you say about how you're approaching it really supports what the piece is asking for as well.
Thank you.
I was wondering, because we have some aspiring, how many people out here are studying theater? Raise your hands.
Oh, good, not so many.
Oh, good.
Okay. And how many of you are mostly interested in performance at this point? Raise your hand. Okay. Oh, so some of you are interested in other things in theater.
There you go. Some of you are discovering it right now.
Okay, thank you. So, is there any kind of turning point that each of you may have thought about? This was the moment when I knew this was what I wanted to do with my life, or this was the person who helped me to understand that this is what I want to do with my life?
I had just extremely supportive parents. I was raised in a Methodist church, and we sang all the time, all the time. I grew up in West Virginia, and I was at church Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Tuesday afternoon, Thursday evening, sometimes Saturday morning. Now, I tell you that just simply because we were always singing on those times. And I knew that I was going to do something in singing. I knew at a very young age that I was going to be a singer of some sort. And so the best piece of advice that I ever received from my dad was, you should have a plan B. And I say that in all seriousness because this is one of those quote unquote jobs, careers that you don't actually pick it. It picks you. You have a gift that was given you by God. You have many gifts that were given you by God. And it's your job, my opinion, to explore what all those gifts are, figure out which ones you do the best, and then sink every ounce of your being into those gifts and move forward, find out what that is. In particular, this job of performance, you have to love what you do. If you don't love what you do, if you're not doing this because you love it, you can't do it. You seriously cannot accept all of the rejection that you get day after day after day after day trying to do something that you love unless you absolutely, it's born in you, it's in your heart, it's in your soul, and you can step back and say, they're not angry with me, they're not upset with me, they're not judging me, they're judging my portrayal of a character. So I would say that that's it. Always, if you're going to do this performance, it has to be in your heart, it has to be in your soul, and you have to absolutely love it. And then the second would be have a plan B. Because I have a BA in marketing, and I didn't come to New York until I was 23, 24 years old. And that's after I had given the Ben Franklin clothes and 6 months to try to, hold down a job. And I couldn't do it. I simply couldn't do it because my love for music and my love for the theater. And so I guess that's what.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Betsy, what about for you?
Well, for me, they're much like Mark. There was never another option. I started doing professional theater when I was 8 in Chicago, and that was all there was for me. And much like Mark, my dad sat me down and said, you got to have something to fall back on. And my biggest piece of advice, I kind of have two, is first of all, whenever you're asking, if you're interested in going to theater, and when you're asking people, make sure you ask a bunch of different people, because everyone has a different path that works for them. If you come and ask me, I will tell you, you must go to school. You must go and finish high school, and you must go to college, preferably a liberal arts college, not a conservatory, and you must study as many different things as you possibly can, because not only will that make whatever that something to fall back on that much more of a reality, it'll also make you that much better of an actor. The more you know about the world, the more you know about, whatever the subject may be, whether it's history or science or art, you will be a better actor if you are that much more knowledgeable. And if there is anything else in the world that you love as much or more than theater, go do that. Because even when it's easy, it's hard. We all have jobs right now, wonderful jobs, and we spend money flying to New York to audition for this, flying to LA to audition for that. We were in LA for 7 weeks, and I spent 4 of my 6 days off on red-eye flights going back to New York. It was brutal, it was expensive, but that's what you have to do in order to consistently, to keep working. Mm-hmm. And it's hard and wonderful, but you have to love it more than anything.
You both leaned in. It was so cute. You know what? I've been doing this. I've been doing it so long. I'm probably not very good at anything else. I worked construction as an executive in a construction firm, and that was terrible. Every time I quit the business, I get a good job. So, and like 3 or 4 times, I've been like, I can't handle the stress of the business, and then I got a good gig. And then I was like, okay, and then I played that one out, and then I would say, okay, now I'm done, now I'm going to get serious or something like that. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to, and then I get another job. So my realization is that whatever success I now enjoy was attracted to me by the person I've become, in the sense that none of this, I couldn't handle anything when I was a younger man. But as I've gotten older and gotten more confident, my choices have gotten better, and I've benefited as a result of that. And I think that everything that we're saying up here is a good idea. You have to have a plan B. You have to have something, but you also have to promise yourself that you're going to go at it full bore. Because if you don't show up. Because there's some kid. I'm always blown away by kids from the Midwest, like corn-fed Iowa people that are on a Broadway stage next to me. I grew up in New Jersey. I was in the city, I don't know, a couple times a week. And I'm dancing not me, but I mean, I'm acting next to somebody who Broadway may as well have been the other side of the moon for all he knows.
Like
but
me.
his desire, like you, his desire, okay guys, okay, I grew up in Jersey, like I said. But it's like there are people that are driven and it's competitive. And if you're not going to be competitive, then don't show up, because it'll chew you up.
Remember, you're only competing with yourself.
That's right.
That's true.
You're not
That's the
competing
competition.
against anybody
Get yourself
else.
to that spot.
Right. Right.
Which in itself is a real task. It's much harder to compete with yourself. You reach a certain level and you say, oh, wow, I'm as good as I can get. No.
But also even the bad times. I remember being at a really terrible audition, and when I left there, I was like, I can't do this to myself. I can't do this anymore. And out of that pain that I had, I came up with an idea for a television show that I ended up producing and shooting a demo on it and giving it to a producer, and we're shopping it around. But it's the things that when you stumble, the things you're getting up and moving forward. And had I not gone through that pain, I may not have had that inspiration or the drive to try something else, to try another part of the industry. And so, I mean, it's just about growing up, and like we said, the more well-rounded you are as a person, the more of that intelligence you can bring to yourself as an artist, and that's what people notice. That's what's exciting. Anybody can tell fart jokes, but it's the guy. It's like they say John Belushi when he did a samurai optician. Anybody remember that? Who remembers this John Belushi doing the samurai sword guy?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, yeah. So that's an iconic thing. But he was doing a Akira Kurosawa character. He wasn't just acting like some character. He actually created a character that was part of Japanese cinema in the 50s. You will bring your highest level of your intellect to your work, and everybody benefits.
This to me demonstrates something that I always have believed, that great talent and great intelligence go together. That, you know, the idea of a dumb actor that's just a vessel, or the puppet master is pulling, is not true. For those of you interested in acting, keep yourself curious and inquiring, just as they've just articulated so beautifully. I wanted to just ask you what it's like acting with your daughter on the stage. And actually, Betsy, because obviously starting at 8 years old, you were a child professional. How does it feel being with the dad of a child professional on stage? You know, does it bring up any memories, good or bad, about that?
Well, it's an absolute honor for me to perform with Kylie. Kylie is a gifted child, if I do say so myself. Her mother and I both are in this industry. We're both driven, both from the Midwest or somewhere else, not New Jersey. Christy was from Michigan, I was from West Virginia. So, people said, I said, I want to be a Broadway singer. This was about 18 years old, and they're going, what's Broadway?
It's in Bloomington.
And so, but having two parents that love this industry so much and that do everything that they can possibly do to work in this industry, our children have grown up very, very close to it, and so apples don't fall far from trees. And Kylie and Grace both. Grace is 10, Kylie's 8. Auditioned for Les Mis when the opportunity came about. It was a replacement situation on this tour, and they said that my 10-year-old Grace was too tall and that my 8-year-old Kylie was too short. And about 3 weeks later, they called me and said, would you be interested in coming and doing this gig? And my first reaction was, it's already on my resume, but of course, I'm always interested in doing this gig. It's such a wonderful, wonderful story. And what makes it for me, I guess, in that she is here with me, is that she is getting an opportunity that I got when I was a child, acting with my mother in the church or at Marshall University at the theater, with the theater company there. When they would do something, my mother would always audition for it, and she would get one of the roles, and then my brother or my sister or I would all be there and working with them. And Kylie's just getting it on a bit of a higher level than when I got it. And she absolutely loves it. We still ask her every day, are you still okay? Do you want to continue doing this? Is this something that you're enjoying? Oh, I'm having a blast. I'm great. This is great. I want to do this. We would never force her to do it. We would never, it's got to be her idea. I will support anything that she wants to do, but she is a natural. It's an absolute natural. And it is just, there's too much joy, actually, for me to even try to put my arms around her, conceal, to watch her come out on stage and be herself on stage at 8 years old. It's just
That's wonderful. Thank you. And that's interesting. I didn't realize that she was 8, and that's the age that you started. So what was it like being 8 doing this? And do you have any advice for Kylie?
I couldn't. Kylie is a fascinating young girl, and she is, both Kylie and Grace have some of the most well-developed emotions and ways of going about life that I am constantly impressed by. And I just like to kind of stand back and be somebody who can, have fun with them and enjoy their being there as much as you do. It's just great having both of them around because they're really amazing kids. And the similarities for me when I was a kid it's a little bit different because I was able to live at home and I was able to have my mom or dad either drop me off or a carpool or whatever, and then I would go into the city and work, whether it was at the Goodman or Drury Lane Steppenwolf, and this is different. It's all encompassing for them, and
Right.
the way that they handle it is admirable for an adult, let alone for a child.
They say that Washington audiences are particularly generous over the years, talking with people who come from on a tour or come from other places to DC. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about, I mean, obviously, I know you're not going to say we suck, but if you have any, well, maybe Andrew.
Try us. Andrew might. I don't
That's
know.
right. But if you have anything about to say about audiences in different parts of the country and audiences here.
What's unique about the audiences here, I find, is that it's not the loudest, and it's not the yelliest and the cheering, but you can tell that you're listening all the time. The amount of attention is very present for me in my 10 minutes of the show.
I
But a memorable.
I can vouch for you with that. I get a lot more time on the stage with my character, and you can tell that these audiences are really into hearing what's going on, really into the storytelling, and they're also an educated audience, so that they're paying attention to the direction that you're taking them, and that means everything. It means absolutely everything.
There's no lack of theater in this town, so I mean, there's lots of options. So this is one of those high level audiences that you get that they're like, he went up right there, he didn't say the right lyric. It's like as opposed to other places like, look at that, that's pretty, look at the lights. So we get both kinds. But this is one of those. Because I've done shows where the audience at the end of the thing they're just like, yay, let's go to Applebee's. But this one you leave and there are people debilitated in the they're just so broken open with emotion from the show, and they love it and they freak out, and it's a gift. Every time we're on stage bowing, I make sure to look up at one of the spotlights and just think, this is my job. I get to do this. And I always say, I've done the show for 4 years. I did Les Mis on Broadway for 4 years. And is it hard to do a show that long? And I think, I could have been in Cats. I could have been doing, I've done long runs in shows, and I thank God every day that I could do a real piece of art, a real piece of theater. No offense to Cats. If you love Cats, I did that show too. It's cool. They're worse gigs.
They're high school students.
Cats is a show.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God! Cats is a show.
Had to get you out of that one.
Thank you. I'm in a tailspin.
Just quickly, all of you or any of you, how do you keep a role fresh for yourselves? Doing something night after night. There's a story that Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady, the original Broadway production, which I saw when I was a very small child, and I wish I could remember it actually. But he knew it was time to leave the show, he said, when he was halfway through the second act and didn't even remember that he was doing anything. And obviously, none of you is on automatic pilot. You're giving us your hearts and souls. But how do you do that night after night?
I think, like I said, I just remind myself that I'm so lucky, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to just. It's such a great opportunity to reach down into yourself and to find something in yourself to pull out, because that's what makes a performance exciting. It's like if you honestly go to an organic place with your character, then whatever you're putting out there, they're going to get blown away, and the deeper you go into that, the more effective you are as an actor. So I mean, who gets to do that?
Right.
That's right.
Listening.
Yeah.
Every night, both of them will say something to me differently. And if I'm actually listening, what I say to them is going to come out differently, depending on how. So as long as you're always paying attention, and people in the ensemble will do something different that'll affect me, whether it's an ad lib or how they say something. And as long as you're constantly listening to what's going on around you, your reactions and the way that you deliver your part is going to be different inherently every night.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that it's, one of the stumbling stones in a long-running production like this is that it can get stale. And so for me, it's a hands-on thing every day. I start warming up my body physically. I start warming up my voice very, very early on in the day to make sure that I know that all of my faculties are going to be there and I'm going to be able to deliver the way I am expected to deliver every evening. And this being such a very, very demanding show on everybody, not just on me, but on everybody, because it's a highly emotionally charged deliverance of this message. So every single character on that stage is giving you emotional energy, of which the audience is very, very, lovely to return to us, which keeps us going each evening. But when the times come that you get tired, like after that 6th month or the 8th month or whatever it is that you've been doing, 7, 8 shows a week, what I continue to focus on the people that may be in the audience that have not seen this message, that have not had the opportunity to read the book, that have not had the opportunity to see the show beforehand, or once before, or twice before. And then when I get really tired, I focus on telling the story to a 12-year-old, or a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old. The younger that I can go, the more that I can focus on making certain that every single lyric that I sing or word that I say is understandable to a 12-year-old, then I know that everybody else in the audience is going to get the message. Is going to get the message.
I'm going to need a minute.
5 seconds.
5 seconds.
And that's what's key for us is that you get the message, that you're able to enjoy what it is that we're doing.
No, thank you at all for it, and I certainly, as somebody who sat in the audience the other night, I felt that. I also think it's so interesting. We, not all of us who love this, all of you who are here because you love it, but people always like to talk about they, the sort of nameless masses out there, and like to underestimate them also. But this is a very complicated show, and it's a very long show, and everybody does stay with it. And I just think that's interesting to remember that art can be really ambitious, and that we don't have to play to the lowest common denominator. And certainly this show, this production, and your performances speak to that. And the ensemble is, wonderful. You don't feel like it's just, I'm spear carrier number 27. That they're really committed to what they're doing. And I'm wondering, in the rehearsal process, did you all have a lot of interaction together? And, how did that work?
With the exception of these two guys, every single one of us, Marius, Cosette, Eponine, we all are, myself included, we're all in the ensemble as well. I am long dead, and I'm up on that barricade praying and handing him a cup of water.
Clean the cup, would you please?
I know.
It's disgusting.
I broke it.
I
did break it. So we are all part of the ensemble.
Fabulous, yeah.
So, and for me personally, that was something that I asked about, because you're talking about villains before and how the audience perceives you, but inside the show, I am perceived as a villain by my peers, and I spend the first half of the show just getting it from all angles, and it's hard, and I wanted something that had that camaraderie with my other actors on stage, where I could be part of the show as a whole. This show is named after the ensemble, The Miserable. It's named, it's not named Fantine, it should be, but it's not. It's named after those people who were fighting for, both in real life today and when the show takes place in France. So, yeah, we do spend time with them. I am them.
That's fabulous. I was wondering, actually, because the other sad thing, I think, with the economic realities of live theater nowadays, you don't get to see such a large cast on stage. And that was a joy to me, too, that if they could do a show with less than one actor, there are producers who would probably figure out how to do it. So it was really wonderful to see that ensemble.
Yeah. We're having just too much fun. It's really who are the people in your neighborhood, because everybody in the building has a different personality, and everybody gets along. There's no drama. It's such a gift to have a company of actors that aren't at each other's throats constantly. We're all too busy having fun to get annoyed with each other, and we all are too grateful to be doing this particular piece. Where it's a great job in a great piece.
Well, I think now we'll open things up. We have about 15 minutes or so for some questions. So if people would line up, I guess, by the microphone there, and
if you can't get to the microphone, can you just project from your seat?
absolutely,
Wow.
and,
You know what?
absolutely, and I will repeat it just in case. So how about if you're number 2, because somebody got to the microphone.
Hi, I'm a theater teacher in Southern Maryland. I brought some of my students here today, and I actually have an anecdote. Mr. McKay, correct?
McVey.
McVey, sorry about that.
That's all right.
I brought some students, I'll just say many years ago, to Broadway and got to see you on stage there. And I wanted to let the students out here know that you have to be very, very careful, because we actually saw you in a matinee, and we were waiting at the stage door afterwards, and we were trying to make sure we got everyone's autographs.
I don't like where this is going.
This man looked totally different than his picture. He had a hat on, he put his hoodie on, he came walking out the door, and he stopped, like, are they going to know who I am or not? And we didn't figure it out. So he kept right on going, right on past us to get out to where he needed to because he did have a show that evening. But when you came back, he did sign all of our autographs, and we appreciate that very, very much. So watch these sneaky actors, okay?
I have to say, I may be one of those sneaky actors, but this man, maybe it's the years that have passed since that first time on Broadway, he is out there every single night signing autographs and talking to those people like no one I have ever seen before.
Right.
So I'll sneak out. But
I will have to say, I did stop
You did.
to see if anybody would recognize.
Well, you look so different in the show with the wig, and I don't
Yeah,
think you had the
it
big
is.
head.
But it's very, very difficult as well. In between shows, that is, we have even less on this show than we had on Broadway. But there's only a finite moment that this particular character gets to eat. because the amount of energy that it takes, I have to put some food in, and yet if I eat too much or if I eat too late, it ends up on the first row. Which is not pretty if it happens to be eggplant parmesan.
Oh, why would the eggplant?
The other thing, though, that I think your comment speaks to is that each of these performers is totally transformed on stage. And what I mean by that is that they seem taller, shorter, different, and that was something, I mean, really, I wouldn't have been absolutely certain which roles you played if I didn't know, because I was, So,
and once you've had the experience once of going and being like, would you like an autograph?
Yeah.
And the person being like, no.
Actually,
like,
I have a story. I was doing the student prince in New Jersey, and I looked a lot like the guy who was playing the lead, and this cat came up to me with his camcorder, and he's like, hi, we're from Bayonne, too. He and his wife, we're from Bayonne. And I'm like, oh, he's thinking about the dude who played the lead. And I went, oh, you know what? I'm sorry, that's Tom, and he's still inside. And the guy went, oh, and he hit rewind on his camera and he walked away. And I was just like, I was 18, and I was just like, that's awesome. I'll never forget you. So, yeah. So honestly, if you walk outside and nobody goes, can I have your autograph? You don't want to feel like a total D-bag and go up to them and be like, hi, I was Javert, you want me to sign that? You don't want to do that. So if you get passed, you get passed.
now,
Hear
project.
I would take all 3 of your autographs in a snap.
Yay.
I'm just so excited to come and see the show on the 19th of October is when I have my tickets. And I just wanted to thank you for your investment in the young people who've come today. And my question was primarily to Mr. McVey because you're the only one who's indicated you have family. You all haven't spoken about it, so I don't mean to exclude you, but I'm just wondering about if you could speak just briefly to what it is to be a husband and father home that you go to every night. And I'm wondering too, there seemed like there might be a little bit of a faith element that informs some of your acting, and I'd be curious to hear just a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you. The Andrew also is on tour with his family, and so I think that he can probably help in this. It is a joy, first off, for me. My entire life is faith-based, and so I start each and every day being as grateful and as thankful as I can possibly be. That's the this particular role helped me to do that 20 some odd years ago when I first undertook the role. And the opportunity, I have never, and probably never will, have an opportunity to play a role that is significantly, as it has, changed my life, made me want to be a better person, made me want to delve into my faith deeper, made me want to share my faith with others, made me want to do exactly what my God wants me to do. You can go to church all your life and never ever have a redemption experience, a redemptive or redemption experience. I have. That informs my character. That's why I keep getting called to come back and tell this story. Having my family on the road with me is a true godsend. I was on the road for the first, maybe 3 weeks to a month, I guess. 6 weeks, I guess, without my family. And it was difficult. It was almost necessary for me to have that much time so that I could get everything under my belt. But then that wanting situation of wanting your wife around to help you, level you for the day, wanting to give your children a hug every morning and every night, wanting to say, Skype does a lot, but it doesn't give you the hug in the morning. So it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. Both my children and my wife are on tour with me now, and it'll be that way through the time that Kylie decides that if she doesn't want to do it any longer. And if she does want to do it, probably Christy and Grace will go home maybe in February, and it'll just be Kylie and I on the road, and Christy and Grace will go home. But it's a true godsend to be able to live and travel together as a family unit so that my children can get the benefit of what the Lord is teaching me. And Christy, my wife. Over the telephone, it doesn't quite transmit as nicely. So thank you for asking.
Andrew, do you want to speak to that as well?
Yeah, it's a really amazing experience, and I have my little boy out here with me. He's 9, and it's great. Today we were out in the Washington Monument taking pictures, and he's been in the St. Louis Arch, and there's been a lot of great things that we've been able to show him. So and additionally, my son has autism. So the things that we do for him, the benefits that we give him, he might not otherwise choose to experience himself. So it allows my wife and I to overgive, and he gets a lot of interesting experiences in his life.
And they're the lucky ones. I'm kind of the other side of the coin. I don't have a child, but I have a home and a significant other in New York City, and every day is a challenge trying to figure out when next I get to see them, and what we're willing to pay, and how long Skype will take you before, you have to. I tell people who ask, I'm having trouble on the road. You have to keep one foot in reality, and you have to keep one foot on the road, because if you don't have your family with you, it can very easily become a surreal bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 1 foot in reality, 1 foot on the road.
Yeah.
That can be really hard.
Thank you. Do you have a question, sir?
Yes, first a comment and then a question. A comment to Mr. McVey. Hello from a fellow West Virginian. I'm from Charleston. I know you're from Huntington, so
Hi.
go Mountaineers. We're
Go
glad you're
Mountaineers.
representing us well. The next question I had was to Andrew about the role of Javert vocally versus the role of Jean Valjean. It was very interesting to hear that you had played both roles because seemingly the Jean Valjean character, of course, has a higher register kind of to it. And playing the Javert role now, have you had to change the way you deliver vocally and physically to match that darker kind of tone, that darker kind of register?
Yeah,
Is there any change
my-
between the two?
My voice always sort of bobbled in a sort of lyric baritone range, the high baritone sort of thing, so I was able to do Valjean. Now I think it's very interesting because it's not easy to sing. I have to pay attention. And I've you know, as a singer, been singing my whole life. You can kind of go on autopilot if you're doing something that you've done a lot. These two characters, you have to pay attention every step of the way. Javert is on stage for half an hour. He's on stage for 2.5. So it's the attention that you have to pay, that I have to pay. It's level 10 attention, but I do it for a third of the time that he does for Valjean. But there is still, you still find the reward. I remember finishing Valjean and taking my bow. And when you're a young man, sometimes it can be hard to own something. But when you finish doing Valjean and the audience is applauding and you have that last bow, it's mind-blowing because you worked your ass off and they're giving you the love. You gave the love to them and they're giving it to you. That's a surreal experience. With Javert, you know what? I'm older. I certainly enjoy doing it. I have to pay attention, but I'm lucky enough that he's doing all the work. So I don't. I have actually a recording of me the first time I went through the music when I found out I got the role. It was a mess. It was a mess. I was coughing halfway through. And now it's great. Now I really enjoy singing it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. McVey, you mentioned the message of Les Mis, and I was just wondering if each of you maybe could summarize what you think the message of the play and the book is, and what you're hoping the audience understands the message to be by the end of the show.
Yes, I have. I do. I think that the message is, and I guess it's really, from my point of view, something that the way that Hugo wrote it and the way actually that Claude Michel and Alain focused the story is more toward the Valjean character. There's an awful lot, if you read the book, there's 1,500 pages, there's an awful lot that they could have chosen from, and they decided these things were the main points. I think it is a story truly of redemption and of grace, and that wonderful struggle that we, each of us, every single day go through, now that we are, as a world, living under grace. At the time that this particular story took place, we were living under grace as well. And I think the show itself has done a very good job in pointing it that way. But what makes it very special for me is that I have had that experience before. And so understanding it as that, in that situation, my storytelling is extremely informed by that situation. And so for me, it is definitely, it's nothing but grace. It's nothing but the redemptive power of the Lord Jesus Christ. And it doesn't get any better for a Christian to tell that story. It just doesn't get any better.
There are 8 fairly complete stories in this show, 8 characters that you really see their lives and you really see their stories. And what makes this show unique is that no matter who you are, you're going to come and be able to relate to one of those stories, if not more. And I think for me, dignity is a big thing with Fantine, and making sure that she keeps that intact for herself and for her daughter, despite the sacrifices. And period.
Love Betsy.
Love Betsy.
I fully agree with Mark. I think that my character's experience in the piece is I need the antagonist. I need to have a reason to. He needs to have something to prod him along, his character, and my character is that force. But luckily, it's not. It's a journey as well. You know, going all the way into compassion is inherent in God. Love is the basis of God. God is love, and if you forget that and in pursuit of another ideal, of another ultimate, then you are missing the point. You know, so that's why at the end of it, rather than accept that that's the world I live in, I kill myself. Sorry if you haven't seen it. But yeah, that's...
We all die.
We all die. Spoiler alert. Everything's dead.
Thank you.
And I will just add one thing. I think even though Andrew is only in the story for a half an hour and I'm in the story for 2.5, his role is just as difficult to play as mine is. And the reason that is because he doesn't get all of that line through. He comes in and he has to be ready and set to go because his is every single time. It's very specific and he has to be there. And if he's not there, then my story doesn't get told as well. So it's very important that his focus is true and is right to what that character is that he's created. And it makes...
It's a love fest.
It is indeed.
Sorry.
But yeah, and it's an actual labor of love every single day to put it on, and I think that it's pretty obvious that we all absolutely adore it, love it.
Oh, come on, hon.
We have time for one more question, and you are it.
Oh, look at that. Go all Rihanna on it, honey. Go.
How does it feel to act on stage with the audience and all the lights and everything like that?
The audience is critical. You couldn't, if the audience wasn't there, we couldn't get through 8 shows a week. The audience response, everything is absolutely a critical part of our experience, every performance.
And that's a good question too, because when we rehearse this show, we don't have lights and we don't have costumes and we don't have an orchestra. Those are things that are added at the very end, and we really get used to those elements in front of an audience. It's called a preview period, and for somebody like Mark, you didn't get any of that because we were already up and running. Rehearsals were over, and really he learned the show in a room by himself with a director and a dance captain, and then he got plugged into our show. And all of a sudden, boom, you have all of the elements there. So it can be very overwhelming and take some time to get used to.
It is, it's a life-changing experience to do things in front of an audience and with lights. The reason that I do live theater is for this exchange of energy. Seeing that smile on your face as you asked the question and you couldn't quite get it out, I could feel the energy from you. And I hope that you can feel the energy and the love that I feel back at you for asking such a great question. Because this is what it's all about. It's about the human story, this reaction, action and reaction, question and answer. And that's what makes live theater so wonderful and such a gift. Thank you so much.
I think we can't top that. So thank you all for being such a wonderful audience, but particularly thank you to you all.